It is early in the morning as we leave Auckland on a 2-hour ride to Metameta, where we will be touring the Hobbit Town movie set. As we leave the city, we are soon surrounded by farmland devoted to grazing cattle and sheep. During the ride, we learned that in 1998, Sir Peter Jackson chose the 1,250-acre Alexander Sheep Farm as the site for the Hobbit Town set to make The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings movies. The set was built using plastic and other temporary materials, and after the movie was completed, it was torn down. But people kept coming back to visit the site, so we had it rebuilt using permanent materials and then opened it to tourists. There was a welcome sign in the town of Metameta, and we soon arrived at the staging area where we could see the Alexander farm across the way. Entering the farm, the topography was hilly and slightly surreal, and we could begin to see why this site was chosen. We were led into Hobbit Town by our guide Rachel, who entertained us with stories about how the movies were made.
And this way we have my favourite, the little Beekeeper. He's got the red door over this way. We're going to walk past that, I promise. You have the village drunk way up the back there. Had to try and keep him where he wouldn't disturb the neighbours. And this is the heads up that everyone needs. That yellow door over that way, that belongs to Lobelia Sackville Baggins. If you know who that is, you probably already have this heads up. Hold tight to your silverware, iPhones or other personal belongings. If you haven't read the book, you should know she's light-fingered. We've learned a little bit more about the themes and we've talked a bit more about them. That light-fingeredness of Lobelia, it's got to come in handy elsewhere. See this orchard just over this way? The orchard has apple, pear and quince trees. Absolutely gorgeous, but unfortunately for us, not quite what Peter Jackson had envisioned. He'd read about how the hobbits would sit under plum trees to make pyramids with the stones, right? Teeny tiny issue. A plum tree next to these, it's the wrong scale size. We couldn't just take these out now, they were already planted. So plan B, disguise the apple tree. Take off its fruit, take off its leaves, wire on artificial plum fruit, artificial plum leaves, and give it 3 seconds in the movies. What can I say? We're all about the details. Another bit for our details out here, team, we're not just worried about how things look, but we're also worried about how things sound. See the little ponds just behind me here? It's what we call the frog pond. When we first came out here, we put in the pond and then a family of frogs were like, "A new home, hooray!" But they weren't quite the ambience we were going for in the background. In fact, none of our native New Zealand wildlife was. It just didn't quite cut the mustard, so instead all of the sounds that you hear in the movies, they're artificial. I know, it's absolutely heartbreaking. And to make sure of this, they actually sent around an eagle. He was one of the animals used in Animal Kingdom, and he flew around about half an hour before filming commenced each morning to scare off any of the native wildlife and keep everything quiet for filming on the movie set. So there you go. It's absolutely insane the lengths they would go to keep this going. But it's super gorgeous, and I imagine you guys want to check it out, so shall we?
We walked past the orchard and the frog pond, and by the hole of Lobelia Baggins, who wasn't home. But here is what she looks like in the movie.
Now, everything in here, excitingly enough, is real. We have 7 wonderful gardeners who maintain all of this for us full-time, and they get a helping hand from some of the guides in the mornings. Now, we are a movie set, so there are a couple of extras around the movie set, but for the most part, everything on the set is real. It's about like a 95 to 5% ratio of real to fake, so that's super cool, right? Now, on that ratio of like real to fake, we actually have one tree out here that is entirely artificial. The tree itself is made with a steel frame, an expanding foam coating, a silicon oak bark press, and then we wired on about 200,000 leaves. Anyone think they know which tree it could be? There's some very hot answers there. Some of you are looking at me like, what? Would you guys like some clues? So the tree you're looking for is probably on top of a hill, likely across to the left and definitely above a big green door. Cool, right? And you can only tell when it gets super windy, because everything else is like blowing like this, and that one bounces. It's really funny actually, but it's very, very cool. Now, the reason we have this tree is because we filmed The Lord of the Rings first and then did The Hobbit after. The Hobbit tree needed to look 60 years younger than that of The Lord of the Rings, so we created this. It took 10 months for Weta Workshops to create it. Then they left it out here for about a month before filming because Peter Jackson got quite sick. So when they finally came out to check everything was perfect, he took one look at that tree and went, it's the wrong color. Turns out it had got sun bleached and it wasn't the spring green that he'd been envisioning. So we sent some people and a cherry picker to spray it all back for us. Only took them 4 days, but hey, it looks good! You guys want to get a little higher and check it out? Up the hill we go!
As we walked up the path, we passed numerous hobbit holes, each composed in every detail with unique colors and props that reflected the owner's occupation, interests, and position in the town. We passed the hole of the fishmonger. He has an adjoining smokehouse where fish are hanging to be cured, and there is a stack of split wood to keep the fire going. Next is the beekeeper's hole. He has an abundance of flowers and a table out front to display his jars of honey for sale. Further on is the hole of the baker, with bags of flour sitting in a wheelbarrow next to the front door. Additional bags of flour are under a canopy to the side, and there is a display table with inviting loaves of freshly baked bread. The hole of the cheesemaker has a delightful selection of cheeses on a canopy-covered table out front. And finally, there was the modest hole of the town drunk. The attention to detail can be seen in the washing hung out to dry, water pumps, wells, old English wattle fences, decorative mailboxes, birdhouses, smoking chimneys, dormer windows, and even announcements posted on the wall. Near the top of the hill there is a hobbit hole with the door open so that you can have your picture taken standing in the doorway. Note that the interior is only about 4 feet deep. This is true for all of the holes in the Hobbit Town, with the exception of the one that we will be seeing next. Finally reaching the top of the hill, we arrive at the home of Bilbo Baggins. With the tree on the hill above, and the bench with the pipe and the book out front, we can imagine the young Bilbo and the elderly Bilbo Baggins living here and sitting out front, smoking his pipe and surveying the Shire below. Bilbo's home wasn't open for inspection, but as Rachel will describe, this is the one hole that had a full-size interior, and in the movies the computer-generated interior had this appearance.
You can fit 30 people inside the first main room here and about 120 people wall to wall. They made it this large so they could fit the film crew and equipment inside to capture a beautiful sunset over those hills. Wow. Teeny tiny problem. East, west. Oops. But hey, do you know if you wake everyone up at like 3 a.m., catch a sunrise, reverse the footage, it's pretty much the same thing, right? So that's what we did. We got everyone out here, we got them dressed up in their hair, costume, makeup and prosthetics. Only takes 2.5 hours each. And then we had Bilbo and Gandalf set up on the bench seat just here, blow their smoke rings out into the sunrise. And I'd love to tell you they actually possess the talent to blow both the ring and the ship, but unfortunately we had to get a computer involved in there, and that was computer generated imaging. A little bit disappointing, but it looks pretty good. Now just inside you might be able to see a little bit of paint. Now this is the only Hobbit hole to have it, and it is just to tease you guys, as once again we went to studio to have that interior. We wanted to have a wizard scale interior and a Hobbit scale interior to make sure we had that forced perspective. To emphasize Gandalf's height, in his version of the set, he walks in, whacks his head on the chandelier. It is actually part of the script, but then he turns around, smacks his head across a wooden beam. That's not part of the script, but real pain looks better than fake pain. Peter Jackson loved coincidences, and he was a professional, so he only said ouch. so we kept it in the movies.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool, and we are very, very lucky to have that as a scene.
We also learned about leaded glass windows.
Now, windows in the Hobbit world equal wealth, so the more of them you have, the higher on the hill you live, the wealthier you are. Bilbo's doing all right, 13 windows, everyone else out here doing like 2 windows each. It's a little bit crazy, but it was a nice tie-in to history from Tolkien. He wanted everything to kind of reflect back to an old English time period. So we have the windows as a reference to window tax. We have Sandyman the Miller as his reference to the Industrial Revolution. And of course you have the Balrog, which is his reference to his demons in the war. But they're all wonderful things, and you should definitely do that research on your own, because I don't want to spoil it by being super biased. But of course, from here you also need to know that the windows, to make sure that it was the correct dated factor, we actually cooked them on a bed of sand twice to give it a bowed out aged appearance, and used the individual panes of glass into the leading so that we could have them as this beautiful leaded window.
From here we walked down the hill, past the party tree, around the lake, past the mill, and stopped at the Green Dragon pub. At the base of the hill we stood next to the party tree. This massive 150-year-old living carnivorous tree provided the perfect location for Bilbo's 111th birthday party. Rachel describes.
We had Bilbo's 11th birthday take place out here, right here on this party field. It took 3 nights of filming and a bucket load of bribery. We said, hey young kiddos, see this table full of sugary delights? All yours, just come on out for 3 days and you can have it repetitively. Oh yeah, their parents looked at us like, sorry, what? Hey parents, coming out too, we've got something for you guys, this beautiful keg of beer. But people and alcohol, sometimes they get along a little bit too well, and we wanted to make sure that the actors were intact to act, yeah? So they had a very, very special beer, the 1% sobering thought. People could drink all night long and wake up fine and dandy in the mornings, and we had a wonderful placebo effect to prove as such. Night number 2, we brought everyone out here again for this singing, dancing, eating, drinking, but we also brought in some commercial grade fireworks, which are fantastic, except, you know, very loud in a small echoey valley. The light show didn't travel, but the sound sure did. The township of Metameta thought there'd been a gas explosion. Whoopsie! We also did another science experiment. Turns out polystyrene's flammable. Don't know how many of you knew that one. Bilbo's 3-tier birthday cake. It was made out of polystyrene. We added in 111 alight candles. Bilbo started speaking, got this beautiful orange glow on his face as he did so. That was the cake, not the candles. Whoops! But he was doing so well, we didn't want to disturb him, so we just cropped the cake out of the shot and hope you guys don't notice the smoking.
Rachel comments on a nearby hobbit hole with a yellow door and its own story.
Beautiful yellow door, home of my favourite hobbit and the most adorable scene in these movies. Out of this hobbit hole in The Lord of the Rings Return of the King runs a beautiful little hobbit girl, these gorgeous curly ringlets. She runs out and greets Sam, who's just dropped off Bilbo and Frodo to the Grey Havens. Then out behind her walks Sarah McLeod, Rosie, with a baby on her hip. And the best bit is, that baby is her baby in real life. And the little girl running out to greet Sam, that is his daughter in real life as well. We thought, you know, how can we have some real family love in this movie? Oh wait, let's just have some real family love. So it was a nice way to get everyone included and have a part to play. And it's just so sweet and touching. There was just a teeny tiny issue. The second child of Sam and Rosie is Frodo Gamgee. So Sarah McLeod's daughter needed a quick costume change. But once I did that, it was absolutely perfect, and I couldn't imagine a better way to end these films.
We walked around the natural lake, crossed the stone bridge, and past the mill. Our last stop was the Dragon Pub, which had the perfect ambiance and appointments for a mythical hobbit world, including a dragon carving over the bar. We had a mug of hot cider and headed for the exit. As we passed through the gift shop, I noticed this floor mat with a quote from the Fellowship of the Ring that supported a life filled with travel. As our van departed, we were given a final farewell by several curious sheep, and having ended our travels, we are on our way home.